Hi everyone, welcome to our very first science sip for the Luxi podcast. I'm Dr. Lex.
And I'm Dr. Demos.
And we have our cocktails.
Cheers.
Yes, cheers. So we are drinking today a Mediterranean Manhattan.
Because we're in Greece.
Because we're in Greece. So instead of a bourbon, it has raki, which is a grape liquor distilled here in Athens, actually by Demos' cousin.
Yeah.
And the differences are different colors because we have different vermouths. So I'm drinking Otto's vermouth, again, here made in Athens, and
Carpano.
Wait, so you want to switch and see?
Yeah, sure. Let's give it a try.
Okay. I like mine better.
Yeah, yours seems also just a touch sweeter.
Yeah, I think Otto's is definitely sweet vermouth.
I like them both, though. Actually, both are very good.
Yeah.
They're both good vermouth. Yeah.
So, we're here to talk about some science while we're sipping.
Let's do science.
All right. What science did you find interesting this week?
Well, I'm going to go computer science on you.
All right. Somebody took a left turn.
Yes, I did take a left turn. And the reason is I was surprised to find out that the teacher of our kid is introducing the Scratch programming language to year 2 students, otherwise known as first grade in the US, and that they will be learning basic programming skills. But I also noticed that unlike the iPads that the schools have issued to kids, the same thing is being taught.
Oh yeah, we have that app on my phone for our son.
And it's really very simplistic on the app.
Yeah.
You have a unicorn.
Oh, his is a cat.
Oh, his is a cat. Okay. So you have an animal and you drag and drop these dialogue boxes. They look like little thought boxes in a comic strip.
Yeah.
And each thought box is color-coded by the type of action it uses.
Yeah.
And then inside the dialogue box is a behavior you'd like your cat to do, like jump, move forward a few steps, move forward, move backwards a few steps. And then when it does something, then that's if this happens, then you can tell it to do something else. And only if that thing happens.
Yeah, I remember if-then statements.
Exactly. So
this is way better than having to type it in yourself.
These very big and great. And what's awesome is you can drag and drop the dialogue boxes into and around each other and create stories.
It's cool.
And so the Scratch programming language is this dialogue box of stories, and just like writing your own comic book, you can essentially create a story about something being built, and that's a programming language for kids.
Cool.
So, but I have a little twist on it.
Oh, okay. What's that? It's a one for adults.
So believe it or not, the Scratch programming language can be used for adults and for very significant amount of coding. I've seen Pac-Man implemented in Scratch.
Really?
And run on a little credit card sized computer called the Raspberry, or the Raspberry Pi to be exact. And so Scratch, and that, by the way, the programming language is built into a lot of operating systems. For people who don't do programming, you could see like building macros for, let's say, if you're an accountant and you're using QuickBooks, or if you wanted to use Excel to automate some data analysis process. Something like Scratch would be a great way to do it for an adult. So not just making programming easier, but by these little cards that are made by Arduino, that I call like the Arduino Uno. It's a classic product that allows you to make a tiny little microcontroller and put light bulbs on it, or remote control motors, or regular motors, and build robots and such.
Wow.
All of a sudden you now have an infrastructure upon which you could teach a robotics course.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's really great. It's a computer science that is made accessible for more people, and in so many different languages.
How long has it been around, do you know?
So that's a good question. There's the most recent Scratch conference. I think there's Scratch conferences all the time. I don't know when Scratch was invented, but there is a nonprofit organization called the Scratch Foundation, and which supports creative coding for everyone. There's a Scratch Day. There's Scratch conferences that you can get involved in. It's a global celebration. See, Scratch Day happened this year from May 16th to the 20th. And let's see, it's Scratch Day events bringing together young people from the Scratch community to share projects, learn from each other, and welcome newcomers. So that's kind of cool. There's mailing lists. There's also a Scratch Junior, and which is specifically designed for younger kids. So with activity cards, so you don't even have to code on a computer. You can use a card deck, old school.
I love it. Very cool. You know, I did not appreciate sort of what this app was when we put it on my phone for our kid. Yeah. Our kid had it at school and was like, I want it, and it's a good diversion. But yeah, I just was like, oh, look, you can move a little cat around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear more about it. So mine's quite a bit different.
Okay.
So I love this website. It's called Eureka Alert, and it's operated by AAAS, the American Association Advancement of Science, I think. Anyway, they are an organization that's really big into promoting science and using science for policy, things like that. So they have a website. It's called Eureka Alert, and it's basically all of the new press releases about science from a given week. So it's really neat to be able to go and see kind of all of the new science in one place. And so recently I was a guest on an art podcast. It was super fun. And I read this great book called The Secret Lives of Colors. It's all about color and pigments and things like that. So I'm really interested in this, and you all get to hear about it extensively because it's probably what our next podcast series is going to be about. But this press release caught my eye. So, an associate professor of geography out of the Australian Catholic University and his team took all of the data of mercury concentrations in soils and sediments at archaeological sites across the ancient Maya world.
Wow.
Yes.
Sounds like a dissertation topic if there ever was one.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what they found is a huge range from 0.16 parts per million in one place all the way to over 17 parts per million at another site. And
sounds dangerously high.
Yes, just for reference, the toxic effect threshold for mercury is 1 part per million.
Oh wow.
So this is
really, really 7 times more toxic.
17 times.
17 times.
More toxic. And everyone was kind of wondering why the ancient Maya were not known to be metal workers, extensive metal workers, which is usually what you see for mercury contamination.
Yeah.
But they have found vessels with liquid mercury at several Mayan sites. And one of the big pigments in the Mayan culture for painting and dyeing is cinnabar. And cinnabar is a mercury-containing mineral. So it's sulfide, and it's mercury sulfide, so HGS. And it's a bright scarlet to brick red mineral, and you can grind it up to make pigments.
Oh, wow. So you could use it as paint.
Yes, you can do it in paint, and I think you might actually be able to use it as dye as well.
Okay.
And so they think the research team thinks that because for the Maya, objects could contain like a soul force that resided in the blood. So the brilliant red pigment was considered a sacred substance and was really big in sort of their religious ceremonies. So they used a lot of cinnabar, and unfortunately that was really toxic. And it's so toxic it's actually dangerous for archaeologists to dig in some places without the proper precautions because there's still so much mercury left in the soil around these sites. And what I thought was interesting too is that that mercury is rare in the soil, the limestone that is underneath most of the Mayan territory. And so the cinnabar would have had to be shipped from sort of the outskirts of the Mayan Empire at the time.
Oh, no kidding. So they had a shipping system in place to get more of that stuff.
Yes.
So did they make the cinnabar, or did they import, the Mayans import cinnabar?
So they'd import, well, so I think they didn't import it necessarily. I think it was sort of at the edges of their territories were cinnabar deposits, and so they just collected it and shipped it down to the more central locations. And then from there, it's ground into a powder, and then you can put it in like an oil or something to make it into a pigment. So.
Well, as we know, mercury toxicity includes damage to the central nervous system, kidneys, liver, causing tremors, impaired vision and hearing, paralysis, and mental health problems.
Yeah.
And I guess when Hatters were making hats.
Yes, Mad Hatters.
Mad Hatters, it was mental problems because
that's where that stain comes from.
Yeah.
Overexposure to mercury.
Forming hats required a vat of like hot mercury or something, and mercury has a low vapor pressure, so that means it's or a high vapor pressure.
Oh, I don't know. So I do know that it's quite good at leaching into other things.
Yeah.
So that's what we're saying. Even though
it comes into the atmosphere.
Yeah. So even though you would use the cinnabar in a pigment and it would go on a wall or a decoration, that mercury could then still leach into the surrounding environment. So it is quite good at spreading around. But I thought it's fascinating. The further research is they're going to look into whether all of this mercury exposure influenced the larger sociocultural change and trends within the Mayan Empire. So I thought that was really cool. And is what I've been learning about pigments in general. A lot of them are super toxic. A lot of lead.
Well, lead, yes. What colors do you get out of a lead pigment?
Oh, so lead wasn't in and of itself.
Well,
pigment, it's because lead can form salts with chromium, and chromium can take on different colors.
Yeah.
And so most of the lead-based pigments were in combination with chromium. So lead white is one of them.
So you can make a variety of colors.
Yeah, so lead white, and then
like chrome yellow.
Chrome yellow is a chromium, and chromium
lead.
in and of itself has some toxicity issues as well. And then there's the very infamous Scheele's green, which is an arsenic-based one that was very, very popular, and they put it in wallpapers and fabrics, and it was arsenic. And it would react with any dampness and produce arsine gas.
Oh my goodness! So your wallpaper would kill you if it got wet.
Yeah, and actually there's a case where somebody died from arsenic poisoning from wax grapes that were colored with this green pigment.
Oh my goodness. And I know as a kid growing up, you would see these grapes.
This is why your mom told you never to eat the wax fruit.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. That's just scary. So there we go. Toxic metals in colors.
Lots of toxic metals in colors. Which I think it's really fascinating when you think about it. This is cocktail talk if there ever was. I don't know, mine's pink. Should I be worried?
Yeah, it's like, how are they coloring that vermouth?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, obviously, thank goodness you can use pomegranate or other juices to also create these lovely colors.
You can,
but
they're not as bright.
Yeah, they're not going to be as bright. You're not going to be able to color your clothes or do various spiritual practice things that the Mayans were probably doing with cinnabar.
Yeah, I mean, cinnabar has a wide variety of uses all over different cultures. It was really
Apparently
wide.
It's also cosmetic.
Yeah, it's about lead white too. So you hear about women painting their face with lead white because it's such good coverage, it's such good adherence properties that it would sort of mask all of your facial imperfections, but then you're essentially giving yourself lead poisoning.
Yeah. Well, I guess after a certain age, you're not going to see developmental delays due to lead poisoning.
No, but you're still going to kill yourself.
Yeah, you're going to cause neurological issues.
Eventually. But again, with all poisons, it's exposure over time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's really
so maybe a little lead white for Halloween isn't so bad.
I think we have better options nowadays.
Okay, that's good to know. So, no, we'll nix that one.
All right. Well, I think we should finish our cocktails.
I think so too. This is great. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you learned something a little bit fun.
Cheers
and
to you.
as always, stay curious, my friends. Bye.